Hundreds of thousands of millionaires will flee countries like the UK each year in response to increasingly high taxes and increasing anti-wealthy sentiment. Today, I'm going to tell you the countries where millionaires are leaving, where they're going, and what you should know. And we have some numbers here. These are the net outflows. So keep in mind what net outflows mean. That means, yes, there are some millionaires who might move to the United Kingdom. I don't know what those people are thinking. I don't know who their advisors are, but sure, there are millionaires from perhaps Hong Kong or India who will move to the UK. And yet more people will leave the UK, as just one example, under this net outflow system. So we'll go through the top 5 countries. I will tell you what you should know about this and how you should be prepared. These numbers always seem low to me. I mean, we handle a decent volume of clients, including from countries like the UK, and yet there are plenty of different services out there. I happen to think ours is the best. You can go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply and learn more about it. But the idea, for example, 15,200 millionaires will leave China in 2024, that seems low to me in a country of 1.3 billion people. Now, you've only got 6.5 million millionaires in China, so smaller percentage of the population. They are adding millionaires, I think, at the second fastest pace behind the United States, just because these are countries with large populations. They'll lose 15,200 of them. What I see a lot of people from China doing is getting a plan B in place. They go out and get a second passport. Technically not supposed to do that. They go out and get golden visas. They keep those in their back pocket. They're increasingly going out. I hear from all my bankers in Asia, and they're going out and setting up family offices in Singapore. Hong Kong now wants to compete more with Singapore for family offices. They're going out and building wealth bank accounts all over Asia. And what have I told you? My bankers in Asia would rather have a wealthy Chinese, rather have a wealthy Indonesian citizen than a wealthy American, or increasingly some EU citizenships, because of the baggage Western legacy brand citizens bring with them. So lots of wealth being moved around Asia from China. Obviously, capital control is a big issue that have caused people to leave. They've had their ways to move their money around over the years. That is becoming more difficult. And I think we're going to see less migration out to Australia and New Zealand from the Chinese because the restrictions they're placing on how you move the money there. But bottom line, I think a lot of people in China, millionaires, are getting a plan B. 15,200 will leave this year, however. That's closely followed by the UK. Now, we told you not that long ago that according to UBS, the Swiss bank, the UK is the one country that will have fewer millionaires over time. So what that means, China has a net outflow, 15,200 millionaires. I don't think many millionaires are moving to China. I don't know if they count Hong Kong in this. There are some millionaires moving back to Hong Kong. The residence program, CIS, is back. But let's just assume nobody's moving to China. If it's mainland China, 15,200 are leaving. But they're producing more millionaires. The UK is not. They will lose 9,500 millionaires this year. You've seen them on the news. You've seen the 140 million pound plumber. You've seen others coming out and saying this country, forget the high taxes. They're increasingly anti-wealth. And my goodness, how many headlines do you see? They hate the rich, this current government. That's a reflection of the culture, by the way. I don't care who you vote in. That's the culture. The people voted the government in. They're anti-employer. And so what you're seeing in the UK is, yeah, China will create more millionaires. The UK is not creating enough to replace those that are leaving. They will have fewer millionaires. What happens in those places? I grew up in the US. You see places in, let's say, the northeastern US. Let's have a millionaire's tax. They don't always last that long because what happens? Eventually people get sick and they leave. The politicians think, where are you going to go? Elizabeth Warren, Newsom, where are you going to go? Well, people do move. Most of them in a country like the United States move within the United States. They don't save that much on taxes for the big effort of it. People in the UK, they're going to move internationally and they're not being replaced. That's going to be negative for the rest of the millionaires left because the millionaires are the ones paying higher rates of tax. And so what happens when they leave? The government's either going to pull back on its spending, fat chance of that happening, or they're going to tax the rest of the millionaires and more, just keep the outflow going. So the UK is the one place where you are not adding millionaires. India comes in at number 3. They'll lose 4,300 millionaires in 2024. So again, smaller millionaire population out of a huge population, number 1 population in the world. Their needs are obviously a little bit different. India is a fast-growing economy. There's opportunities there. They're looking at education for their kids. Now, you can send your kids somewhere else. You don't have to move to do that. They're looking for higher living standards. They're looking for more safety. And I think that what I'm happy is being decreased around the world is they're looking for that brand. I see more people in Latin America, Eastern Europe, and Southeast Asia who tell me, I don't need the brand, I don't want a US passport, I don't want a Canadian passport. You heard Saifuddin Amos, who is Jordanian. He spoke at Nomad Capitalist Live this past year. We interviewed him. He was living in Canada. He said, I don't need this passport. I'm tired of the taxes. I'm tired of the way they run the country. I don't feel free here. I would rather live in Amman, Jordan, and not have a Canadian passport than pay another dime to be treated like this. And you're seeing more and more people like that, especially if you have some wealth. I've always pushed back on that. There's people who just want the brand name. It's not because the country is better. I've known Chinese people who moved to the US, and then their Chinese friends come from mainland China, and they enjoy bragging about, look at my big house, and look at this, and look at that. And it's just as much about showing off. So, you basically have the country equivalent of a Louis Vuitton store. I don't think it means that there's anything better about the country other than you've done a great job of marketing it over the last 100 years. Because there are plenty of millionaires that come to Nomad Capitalist. We help them move, and they save a lot more in taxes, moving from New Jersey to Florida. If you want to learn about that, go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply. If you've got $1 million in liquid assets and/or $500,000 in annual income and profit, we'd be happy to help you all the way up to we help 9, 10-figure entrepreneurs. Number 4 country, South Korea. Honestly, not sure why people are moving out of South Korea. Obviously it was in the news recently with the president and the impeachment attempt and all that kind of stuff. 1,200 millionaires will leave this year. Wealthy individuals, they say, seeking better business prospects and investment climate elsewhere. Here's the thing. You don't have to move to have a better investment climate. Now, Americans, by virtue of their citizenship, are often restricted from banking, certain investments, and even certain crypto projects. So we've literally had Americans come to us and say, I'm losing out on a lot of money in my industry. I don't want to be American. It's not worth it. I don't get enough value from being American. Get me a second passport. I'm going to give up this one. For most folks, you can invest. I have investments all over the world. It is harder to invest in Indian stocks as a non-resident. A lot of brokerages, you can't really do that. So, that's one exception. But if you're moving for better investment opportunities, okay, if you're going to build a portfolio of rental houses, maybe you want to be there. But if you're buying stocks, if you're making larger investments, if you're expanding your business, I have business interests all over the world. So I think that before you decide to move as a millionaire, as someone who helps millionaires move out of their country, understand your reasons and make sure that you actually do need to move first. I don't want to help anybody move if they don't need to move. Russia, number 5, about 1,000 millionaires will leave. Of course, it's become a toxic passport, ongoing geopolitical tensions. I'm sure some of those folks don't agree with what's happening in the country right now. Economic sanctions, all that kind of stuff. Of course, you've seen people who aren't millionaires, from the start of the Russia-Ukraine war, leaving. Primarily, that's what drove up prices of property in Georgia, Armenia. I showed you my property under construction in Tbilisi, in Live Like a King, Tbilisi. We put that out recently. The prices went through the roof, in part because a lot of Russians moved in. Same in Armenia. Same in Turkey with the Citizenship by Investment program. Back in 2020, it was one of the cheapest cities for property in the world, Istanbul was. Now it's not so cheap, and I was in Istanbul a week or two ago. And the whole city is not cheap anymore. If you want to go out for a nice meal, it is not cheap. It used to be extremely cheap to live there. It's getting expensive. And we have Live Like a King Istanbul where you can watch that. So Russians have moved to a lot of those places. 1,000 millionaires will leave this year. I can understand that. Here's the thing. I do think that the US, I'm not saying it's going to get to the level of Russia or even anywhere close, but I do think you're already starting to see countries pushing back in the US, countries pushing back in the UK. The global south is emerging. Multipolarity is becoming increasingly a thing. I don't entirely care that Trump wants to threaten BRICS with tariffs, that kind of thing. I think that the rest of the world is going to develop. I think it's a good thing. And I think, just in a tiny little example, where I'm sitting in Colombia, their citizens can now no longer go to the UK without a visa. And what do? Tit for tat. Whether you think it's smart or not, hey, now you guys need a visa to come here. British coming to Colombia. Imagine magnifying that 100-fold and imagine magnifying it to where it's more important kind of stuff. I think geopolitically, I think for investment opportunities, I think people with passports in the US and the UK, it's not going to reach Russia level of international toxic, but I think it's going to get some level closer, whether it's 10%, 20% closer. I think what's happening is the world is becoming more multipolar, is you want to be aware that your country's not going to get a free ride anymore. And 1,000 Russian millionaires are leaving because of that. I think you're going to continue to see greater levels of Americans giving up citizenship, not just because of high taxes, because we help Americans reduce and even eliminate, in some cases, their taxes by moving overseas all the time. But I think if you're looking at a global perspective, of the next 20 years of where you're going to invest, where you're going to park your money, I think you're going to have fewer opportunities because of the high baggage, both from regulations, but also geopolitics that comes with having those passports. And it's the kind of thing, I get it. You might think, hey, what do I care? I'll keep my money in the US. I think that for the same reason these millionaires are leaving, why are they leaving the UK? Their assets aren't safe. Their taxes are too high, and the politicians think that's good. Is that going to get better or worse in the next 20 years? Maybe in 4 years in the US, maybe Trump lowers your taxes by 3%. Congratulations. Is civil asset forfeiture, is all the nasty stuff they do that goes against the Constitution, is that going to go away? I doubt it. Is UK, Australia, Canada going to get better in the long run? No, the trajectory is going in the wrong direction. What I think you want to consider is the plan B versus the plan A. What we have a lot of Americans doing, for example, give me the plan B. Hey, maybe Trump make things better, but my taxes are still going to be high, higher than any of the places where our clients are moving. We've got about 30 some countries, very tax friendly, we've helped people move to. But what they're saying is, give me the second passport so I can have that backup identity. Get me the offshore asset protection plan. So if the capital controls that the Chinese are worried about, what if that comes here? What if they start to raid retirement accounts? Maybe I offshore my IRA. I'm going to move money out of the US. Even if I hold US stocks in a foreign brokerage, or even if I invest in companies that have business in the US, overseas, I want a plan B. Passport, residence permit, maybe a home, asset protection, banks. That's what Americans are wanting. Now, some Americans are still leaving. I want to reduce my taxes because, again, they're not going to be that low. If your goal is paying less tax, reinvesting that back into your business, I don't care who's president of the US, you have $36 trillion in debt. You're not lowering taxes to 9% in Dubai. You're not doing it. But plan A is, I'm tired of paying now and I want to go. And so that's the point I made in South Korea. Just making investments somewhere else, just moving some assets, that's not the issue. But we have plenty of clients. Let me move my business offshore, not to lower my taxes. I won't lower my taxes, but I just want to hire people overseas. I want more asset protection. I want to have protection against litigation, all that kind of stuff. And so the question is plan B versus plan A. I left the United States, never looked back, ultimately gave up the citizenship, and I'm happy with how things have gone. I lived the ultimate plan A. And I think I'm proof that you can do it. You can find high standards of living in other places. You can have the things that you're used to in your country, and you don't have to feel like you're sacrificing. If you're not ready for that, have the plan B. So when the taxes go up, when the politicians come for you, when they threaten the capital controls, you already have the plan ready. We're seeing really hundreds of thousands of millionaires leaving every year, because I think these numbers are quite frankly low, but they show people are going to, as we say, go where you're treated best, and you should too.
This is Hotel Majestic in Kuala Lumpur, and I'm about to take you on a day of luxury living in this rare colonial gem. We're showing you some of my favorite places to spend time right here in Kuala Lumpur. From Malaysia's classiest happy hour with cocktails for under $5, to the charming afternoon tea service in the Orchid Room, to cabaret singers at dinner evocative of old Malaya.